To make matters worse, there's an ego causing havoc. The muscles are growing in numbers and they don't fuck around. Even the Lord won't get in the muscles like that. What's up? What's up? What's going on, YouTube? Back again for another one. I think I was trying to finish the last video I did. We're gonna talk about how the where the Bible fits in the science uh, breakdown of the creation, and basically, what I'm saying, even in science, it's not 100% accurate. They only go by probabilities, and they're accurate based on the fact that they can prove or replicate the actual product, or remake the situation. They have to be able to explain the situation, or be able to replicate it to understand it. They have to break it down and then rebuild it. So for science to explain that, they have to have they have to dig deep into the information. Now, side note to that, welcome back to the Station channel. Today gonna be a good topic. I think it's gonna be, yeah. I mean, some people might be interested into this stuff, some people might be not, but I'm just sharing some things that be on my mind, some thoughts that I'll be having. Things I want to talk about that I think other people also want to talk about. And the reason why I titled this as hypnosis, hypnotism have to be one of the greatest skill that human could ever possess, is because you got to warp somebody's mind to control them to think how you want them to think. Because if you look at the way how the world is today, it's not like none of us thinking in a survival instinct of a normal way. Like humans supposed to, yeah, we have our own mind to shape it the way we want to, but we that mindset you have was shaped from a young age. It was shaped for you to live a certain way. And then the social norm that was, how should I say, converted you to live a certain way is what you're living by. Now you have a small group of people who decide to break the code and they live outside of it, or they challenge that status quo, but the majority of us, nah. The majority of us, yeah, we can't help ourselves. And the majority of us can't help ourselves. We stuck. We don't even know what's real from what ain't real. Based on the post, what you guys see is, you know, where does the Bible fit into the science studies? Science is more logical. They try to be, at least, right? They either create things, dissect things, or analyze things, right? And those things have to show some kind of, they have to show some connection. They have to show some trail. They have to have a blueprint for us to understand what and how and we, and how we're supposed to be and stuff like that. But anyway, the reason why this is so important is because I'm basically saying that the people, the human being, the people that we're living today, We are not thinking for ourselves. We are not functionalizing the way we're supposed to. If you look at all the animals on the planet, they're living in the environment, they're moving in the environment, they're following their structure, and they don't try to go outside of that. And even though, and when I say go out, I'm talking about a mass number. You might have one or two that could either get pushed out, or you might have one stubborn, link that just feel like, you know what, I don't need to be here. I could do what I want. But once the one stubborn animal, insect or whatever leave its habitat, most likely it's gonna die. It's not gonna survive. They don't try to break their rules. They stay within their rules. They create their environment, the environment that's created for them. They try to stay in that environment. They set their boundaries, and that's what they do. That's how they live by their boundaries, and they keep it ruled like that. For us, yes, human beings, we have a greater mindset, or we have a greater exploration of distances we can go, we can travel, we can explore, right? Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when you start to trickerize, hypnotize people to think one way versus the way how it actually works, then you become a villain. We are living under villain controls right now. We are all hypnotized. At least most of us. We all hypnotized. The things we do, the things we fight for, the things we believe, the fake stuff, the the beliefs, the fantasy stuff, the delusion stuff. And I'm not saying these things is not absolute or anything. These are all natural things that can come across the mind to think and behave and react to and stuff like that. The problem is the problem is that we are told that these things are real. The problem is we are told that these things we can actually reach, or we can manipulate these things. And some things can be manipulated, but there's a consequences to some things that you do manipulate. We live in a planet where we know, understand, and I pretty much think we all, well, for the people who understand this, we are all understand that what goes around comes around. We live in a planet where when something happens, it can happen somewhere else, but they're gonna repair itself. It's like a circle. It's like a circle. It goes around. The earth eats itself and spits itself back out. It's a rotation. That's how the earth remains the function for it to keep living. It feeds itself. It shits itself out. That's how the earth functions. It's the same thing for humankind. We create life and then we die. Now, the population is growing, as we know. I mean, it's been growing, right? It's been growing. The thing is, if I'm speaking in a modern point of view, the more people we have, the more crazy stuff gonna happen. But my understanding is this: even though we have this much people, if we live in a certain, how should I say, educational plateau, right? We will know how to progress and live in a more sustainable way. You know what I'm saying? Because we all living by a truthful structure. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, hypnosis is the most greatest weapon a human can ever gain, the greatest skill. Because hypnosis is a skill. It's not everybody knows this skill. Some people are very good at it. Some people is trying to learn it. It's not the best skill in the world, but it's the greatest skill for a human being to understand. Because we can't fly, we ain't Superman. We do have some people with some technical, they have like some people who could, they have like human like unnormal behaviors. That's what I call it. I call it human powers, but that can extensively do things that most humans can't do, right? But to me, when it comes to like a great, I like how they say, with great powers come with great responsibility. Hypnosis is one of the most dangerous skill a human could have. Because once you know how to manipulate somebody, once you know how to hypnotize somebody, and then you can do it to the world. Because this thing started from way, way back then. We're talking like the Bible era. It probably started before the Bible era. But far as we can remember, you know, the Bible era was a way that how this whole hypnotizing started. You got to make people think and feel a certain type of way for you to dictate them and make them move and act and think a certain type of way. And then they can rotate that education and manipulate the people as we go forward. Oh, let me put my camera on. I didn't put my camera on. Here's my camera. There we go. You know what I'm saying? That's what hypnotism is. You can be, it could be good for good, it could be for bad. You know what I'm saying? But the whole world is hypnotized. I would say 95% of us. We grew up hypnotized. We taught to live a certain way, taught to believe certain things. We taught to think this, da 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 da. But when you compare the Bible, right? And this is why I'm saying hypnotized is the greatest power human can have. You have science. Science is supposed to bring truth. It's supposed to tell you what's going on, how it happened, how to fix this, how to fix that, what can solve this, what to prevent this from happening, whether it's present, whether it's past, present, or future. Now, even in science, they do keep things from the society, to, I guess, to hold control or to help manipulate people. My thing is this: just like animals, right? I'm using an example. If you have an animal, right, dog, cat, whatever, and you train this dog or cat in this specific area, right? So he can't go from this place to this place. So he just have a room. Dog have a room. And in that room, the dog have toys, he got food, you feed it every so often, blah, blah, blah. That dog mentality is confined to that room. And he only gonna respond or act based on what you train it to do in that room because it's being hypnotized by you to only do these things. And by doing these things, he gonna get treats. He gonna live this way. He gonna live that way, and he gonna be great. You're gonna have restrictions. You know what I'm saying. You're gonna make that in that room. That's his world. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that mentally, that dog is now being hypnotized. The reason why I'm using that word hypnotize, when that dog get pups, the dog can also treat the pups the way he was treated or she was treated. It's a rotation. So now the hypnotism is now being passed down to the children. The limitation to what you can do, what you can't do. But the person, the owner knows the dog is not limited to that room. The owner knows that. But in the dog's mind, this is what it is. Yeah, the dog might have some times where he might feel like I can go further than where I can go, but it's going to be a fear mechanism there. Until the dog crossed that border, that fear mechanism might never be challenged. You know what I'm saying? So, let me make sure my sound is up. So, my thing is, so great, but I feel like it ever became the greatest skill. Not everybody knows All right. Okay. All right. So like I was saying, yeah, man, the greatest skill is to basically hypnosis because when this, you know, so I'm gonna go into depths now. Right. Let me just go into depths about my point I'm talking about where I post, based on my the post that I post up when I was kind of like showing the timelines of the Earth creation, and in these timelines we have had different, how should I say, um, changes, right, um, of the Earth that have different, like I wouldn't call it destruction, but different like shapes, evolution of the Earth, right? And in science, even though I don't see the science description or science breakdown of the Earth to be 100% correct, I'll probably give it like a 60, 70%, maybe 80%, maybe 90%, right? But who knows, right? But what I can say, to me, I think science is closer because it's giving a more realistic definition or description of how this, our planet, universe, whatever was created, right? Now I'm keeping things on the earth because, we don't really, nobody knows who created anything. We're just going off of speculation. So what I'm saying is science is trying to be realistic. They're trying to tell the truth. They're trying to be honest with people. Not even though they do keep some things, which I still feel like it's a burden because you should tell if we live on this planet Earth, we have to know what's good for us and what's not good for us. You have to know what could poison you, what can't poison you, right? If you don't let people know what kind of food is good for them to eat, people are gonna go around eating anything and they're gonna die, right? So you have to tell them the truth. You know what I'm saying? You have to warn them. So it's the same thing with information outside of just breathing air and eating food, right? If we need to know the truth that what's outside of us or inside, or in the same planet as us, or things that could keep us to sustain us from doing harm, we're supposed to know the truth. We're supposed to know what's true. Why hypnotize us and make us feel like what we know is the only thing in the world that we're supposed to know? And then we bring these, what we call protection, right? To say that the people can't handle the reality of the things that's out there besides what we know, right? It doesn't make sense. And then when you ask questions, you're the problem. You know what I mean? That don't make no sense. But then when something weird happen or some catastrophe happen, people act out because they don't know what they're dealing with. But why they don't know what they're dealing with? Because you kept it a secret. You made people feel like this is not like, for example, I personally, I'm not speaking for nobody, okay? I'm speaking for myself. Believe that I think a couple of years ago, like the early 2000s or so, they was dropping like nukes in the ocean, like under the ocean, and they were saying like, oh, they were just testing weapons and stuff like that. Possibly, I'm not gonna doubt it. It had a time frame in the early 2000 again. We had like weird bombs, weird noises and stuff like that we couldn't explain. We seen things in the sky. Of course, nobody can explain all of these things. But when it comes to the ocean specifically, I personally believe there was animals. Because remember the year or the era, the time frame when they talk about megalodon and stuff like that. I don't think it's a shark specifically. I think there was just some other kind of animal out there that they came across due to submarines or whatever, and they decided that this animal is too big to be in the ocean. Because the animal probably it probably was sinking ships, so we don't know. It probably was. Do believe in luck? Hold on. Right, right. Okay, so yeah. So I believe there was something out there that they had to they wanted to just keep away from the people understanding or to not make people feel like, there's other creatures on the planet that we could probably only see in movies. I guess if you want to call it a chimera, right? Some kind of Godzilla animal. It could have been a super giant squid. Who knows? Nobody knows, right? Some people there was an era. Matter of fact, I think it's like 2010, 2009 or some shit. But before that time, even in the 80s, I was in the early because I'm an 80s baby. So I was like, even in the 90s, they had an era, a time frame where they was talking about mermaids and stuff like that, right? And then it popped up again later on in the 2000s, right? And then the season came. It could have been a prop for a TV show. It could have been a prop for them. They could have been doing props, right? But anyway, here's the thing. So here's the thing. So here's the thing. We don't know what they're doing. Why couldn't they say, well, listen, we found a monster out here, a creature or whatever, and it sunk a bunch of ships, and we decided we're gonna have to get rid of it because we use cargoes and stuff to go over this side of the ocean, and we don't need no animal out here destroying our cargo because we can't get to deliver the ships to where we're supposed to, or goods back and forth from countries to countries. You know what I'm saying? Why not? Why say it's like, oh well, we just testing the weapons, or you know some kind of catastrophe happened and something got exploded by mistake or whatever the case is. Why lie about it? Why not tell the truth? Even when it comes to the sounds, right? The mystical sounds and stuff. Okay, some of them said they were just testing sound for like panic, to like a panic, what do they call it? Panic, just to see how people like a panic sound or panic emergency or whatever, to see how people gonna react and stuff like that. Possibly true. There's some of them say it was just a weapon. They're testing weapons to see, how far the sound can go, or how it affects people, stuff like that. That's possibly right. But also some of the sounds was not, I would just say, not normal, and it was like a consistent thing. It was loud, and we could hear it all over the world, right? Um, I'm saying like simple things like those we can be honest about. You know what I'm saying? Aliens coming in and out, flying all over the place. Why lie about those things? Because like I said, when somebody don't know something, they're gonna act a certain way. They're gonna respond a certain way. Like for example, when you finally tell your kid that Santa Claus ain't real, your kid respond a different way. They're gonna be like, for real. Some kids, like I believed this shit was real at one point until I found out it wasn't real, and I was disappointed. I was literally writing letters to this mythical Santa Claus. I literally wrote a letter, even though the letter I never got a return, but you know what I'm saying. I literally wrote a letter. I think I did it maybe once or twice. I really believe that. But come to find out, it's not real. Even the Easter eggs. And then I realized, like, but wait, how do rabbits lay eggs? That's like years later. I started thinking about it. Like, that don't make no sense. And then when you get your kids, have to educate your kids and let them know, like, this ain't real. All of our parents lie to us. Some of them don't even tell them the truth. They make them believe this thing all their life until they find out it's not real. Me personally, I made it sure that anybody around me, I don't know that stuff ain't real. I'm not gonna play a game, play along with the foolery stuff. That leads into a lot to how we are behaving as human beings. If you notice, right, when you raise people a certain way or you associate with people a certain way, like say you're on a job and your job is treating you fairly, they communicate with you, they don't undermine you as like a just a worker, they treat you like a partner. They run the business, they own the business. You got to come to work, get the job done, blah 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 blah. But they treat you with respect. They treat you like a human being. They treat you like a friend, like a family member. But they need you to do the work. They need other people to do the work because they can't do it themselves. Let me use construction because I've done construction. What I've learned when it comes to construction, most of the workers on a construction, or say all, if anything, there's almost like you build a bond, right, with everybody, at least most of us, right? And the work goes smoother when y'all get along. The work goes smoother because then you kind of want to protect the person next to you or behind you or in front of you or on the left. You know what I mean? You want to be able to work along each other so the work can go because you're physically using your body. You know what I'm saying? So work get done if everybody work accordingly and also maintain the pace so the time time can go fluently. If somebody in the job is not really holding up or being more lazy or they're not doing things right, which can be a safety issue, but also they can make you work harder or also they can make you do something more than once. And when you're doing construction, you don't want to do something more than once. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to do something more than once because it takes time and you're wasting money. Not only are you wasting money, it could be a situation where you got to use a lot of your energy and a lot of your muscle capacity to do what you're doing. Now today things is a little different. Today you could got a lot of machines now, make it a little more easier. But at the same time, it's still a team type family job, and that's what I meant when I say we have to we have to treat each other in that aspect. So if us human beings and we have children, you also generally raise all your kids. Every human being should raise every one of our kids in a humanistic way. Children, mother, father, right? And as you know, the father is more the first on the disciplinary, while the mother is more the nurturer and the carer. But at the same time, the mother can also discipline as well. Just like how the father can bring income in, the mother can bring income in. Okay, why lie to your kids? Why hypnotize them and think that this is not how they're supposed to live? Your children supposed as your children get older, they become, I would say, I don't want to use the word servant because people are going to think of it in a negative way, but your children become the aid of the house. As your children get older, they're supposed to be the one taking care of the house, right? While the mother and father continuously, provide for them and nurture them and educate them as well, give them wisdom and all that good stuff, right? That's how it's supposed to be. That comes with everything, right? A lot of us don't raise our kids that way, and the kids don't get the proper lining of understanding to how they're supposed to progress in life. And then we go to the hypnotism point where they're not falling in line because as they get older, in their mind, because that's the hypnotism right there. They don't understand. Even if you try to tell them, They don't understand it. They're gonna just look at you like, what are you talking about? Like that's not how I was raised. Nobody don't do that. Like I wouldn't. That sounds like a boring life. That sounds like a touch. No, but if you grew up that way, if you was raised that way, your mindset today wouldn't be like that. We wouldn't be doing a lot of negative things. I'm not saying you're gonna be negative. It wouldn't be to the consistency as it is. And somebody will check you at some point because the majority of the people don't go that route. So speaking about the hypnotism thing and the truth between the Bible and science, the Bible hypnotized people. And don't get me wrong, science do play a role in the hypnotism too, because they don't want to tell the truth. They tell people lies to control them or to manipulate them, right? But I think it's more truth in science than the Bible. Because to me, the Bible is more have to be the Bible is more like a cryptic, and the science is more like the one that solved the crypts. You know, the science got to solve it or break it down. For the Bible, you're gonna have to like live it or analyze it as you live in it. Where science solve it. So what I'm saying is, when you listen, when you pay attention to the evolution of the Earth, right? Starting from, I'm not gonna go all the way back because there's no point to doing that, right? If I look on, let me see, uh, hold on, wait. Earth. 1 second, people. 1 second. Because technically, they said they had about two great ice age, and each one of them was the first one lasted about almost like shoot 4 or 5 million years or something like that, 6 million years, and that was like million years ago, almost a billion years ago. And then the second one, then he got warm, and then the second one was about 2 million years ago, and that lasted about between 4 million years, something like that. That brings us to a couple 100,000 years. But they're saying at the end of that ice age, based on science. Now this is just science, okay? Based on the end of that age, um, I would say about 100 and something thousand years in the last great ice age. Great ice age. The second great ice age, sorry, at the end of it, they say about maybe 100 and something thousand years, or maybe 200 something thousand years at the end of it. The um there was a civilization that evolved. And based on history, Abeki Tepe is the last or the first, let me say the first structure of human structure that was built. Now, and it had pictures of animals and different diagrams and stuff like that, right? This is the last ice age, the last great ice age. Before that, before the first great ice age. Now, this is something I learned. I'm not saying I just learned it. I've been kind of learning from high school, from doing school. But I was watching YouTube one day, and I kind of came across the documentary, and it gave me an idea, right? It came to my mind like, wait, hold up, science breakdown, science breakdown how Earth progressed to where we are today, right? And when from science started having, you know, atmosphere and all that good stuff, it went into a ice age era, right? The first ice age era. And the question is, was anything living at that point? Now we're talking about in their definition, they say microbes and stuff like that. 'Cause the microbes started before that, but going into that ice age, you know, things started forming, I guess. And then once it got into a chronic ice age, we don't know what, you know, we don't know what happened. They can't really explain a lot, but they're just microbes and stuff, right? And then from there, when they started warming up again, the cool down, that's when the animals, the dinosaurs, and all these other animals popped up, right? That's when those things happen. I personally think that humans was also around when the dinosaurs was around. They just have to survive longer than the dinosaurs, right? Was giant people at the time when dinosaurs was there? I personally think so. Now, I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm just going with the hypothetical by saying it's a probability that maybe just because they had giant animals, they probably had giant humans too, right? Maybe not as big as like the what they call it, the dinosaur, nah, Tyrannosaurus, I think they call it, Dinosaurus. I can't pronounce the word. That's the one with the long neck, right? I don't think they had giants that tall, but they probably had some giants that tall enough where they can probably probably sit on his back or something like that, right? Because you know, science also say that you know there's some humans that was tall back then too. You know what I'm saying? Cause they, and not to mention the trees, right? There are trees that was super big and wide that you could have put a mansion in these houses, in the tree trunk, and still have room for another mansion, right? So what I'm saying is science show a lot of things historically that make sense, but of course, you know, they can't explain everything. Now, speaking about the creation of stuff, where do the Bible fits in to that, right? Because in the Bible it says God just, you know, God said there was light. No, he said there was darkness, then there was light. Let's say he created the light. Hey, maybe that's what he did. There was darkness, then there was light. And then there was the land. He created the land, the earth. He didn't say how, he didn't say why, he didn't say what kind of mixtures. He didn't give no details on how he created the earth. He just said there was the earth. And then on top of the earth, right, then he dropped water and then plants and all this extra stuff. On the science side of it, science says there was different levels to how the earth evolved to where we are today. In the Bible, it talks about the Nephilims and stuff, which is kind of separated from the book specifically, which I think it should be part of the book. What's good, man? How you doing? It's a different life. Yeah, what's up, man? Anyway, so specifically, but it still doesn't explain anything. It's just saying that. You see what I'm saying? They're just saying that. Science kind of try to break it down in their own way. Now, remember, I'm not saying science is obsolete because they don't know exactly how the earth was created. They're just using their own hypothetical way to explain it. You know what I'm saying? Which is okay. So it's one way. But then the Bible is just saying, yo, we just did it. It just happened. That don't make sense. And let me ask, I'm gonna challenge the God theory. If God is the God that he claims to be, and you're trying to educate your children or the people you create, and you want these people to understand that you are the creator, that you did this, you did that, you need to worship me. You know, I build these things. I'm assuming this godly Bible character should be able to break down the details for people to the human being that worship it to understand that this is how you was created. This is how the earth was created. You should listen to me because I did this for you. You see what I'm saying? There's no blueprint for how the earth was created due to the Bible. Maybe there is, maybe they're hiding it, maybe they're keeping it a secret. But based on what I know is from science, when the first monument that was built, this is before Christ, right? The first, what they call it, Ebeki Tepe, which is the end of the second ice age, right? Which still, that's why we technically still in the ice age, you know? There was people that came to the planet during the dinosaur age. Then the destruction happened, and we went into another ice age. A lot of the animals died out. Where did the people go? Okay, let's say they went in a cave. They said they started living in the cave. This is science. Remember now, I'm comparing two different stories, okay? The Bible story versus the science story. In the science story, in the second ice age, the people went in to live in a cave. Now, I ain't even talk about um, I didn't even talk about the tsunamis or the earth being covered with water and all that good stuff. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm just talking about the ice age era, right? So in the second ice age, people had to live on the ground. It was super cold. Maybe some places was colder than some. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, these people have to find some way to still live, stay warm, because they have to light fires and stuff like that. We know today in some places people have to eat cold food to survive because that's just what it is, right? Let's say they did go under the earth to live. Where did they put all these animals to survive? And how did the animals survive on the ground? They ain't got no grass. So how did they live? Would they eat each other? What kind of animal? There is no history so far that we have found on the ground where humans have found um, like a herd of animal living on the ground. And if it was, you have to kind of think about it. It probably still that's gonna still happen today. It's still the only bats. I mean, unless they're living off of bats, right? I mean, they could. I think they could probably do like some type of worms. Maybe some caves have connection to the ocean, or maybe they had. Some of these cave had connection to the ocean under the ice or whatever. So they probably was going to catch fish. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. We don't. I'm hypothetically speaking for a lot of stuff, right? Now that's just on the science level based on the ice age. Like I said, on the Bible side, the Bible don't talk about nothing about the development of the planet Earth. It don't mention nothing. It doesn't coincide with science. It speaks about things that happen on the Earth. It resembles some of the information that happens on the Earth. Yes, it does. He uses the environment to describe and explain the stories and stuff, but the events that happen that science is explaining, the Bible don't talk about these things. It doesn't explain these things. You know what I'm saying? The Bible doesn't break down the evaluation of human being. It doesn't say it was this group of people and that group of people and that group of people and that group of people. The Bible just said there was humans like us, and they lived this way and they lived that way. They had when they say, because God, he wrote the book or he gave the knowledge to write the book. So the humans at that time should have some kind of knowledge, because once they eat the fruit of the tree, I'm assuming the definition of the fruit of the tree is um in my understanding is they gain the knowledge that God has, so he should be able to know to read, speak, he know sexuality, he know good and bad, all of these different things, right? So him eating the fruit of the good knowledge should give him open the door to all of that understanding. You know what I'm saying? So Adam and Eve should be the first people to understand that all these, they should be able to speak and, move around a certain way. And because once they leave the garden, they have to now create their own, they have to become gardeners. They have to be, what I mean? They have to grow their own food. They have to build huts, have to build houses or whatever they want to have to build for them to live in. Who gave them all that information? They had to learn it, right? So they had to be able to speak, communicate, and all these different things. What about, okay, based on science, because this is where the challenge comes from. Based on science, they say we have different levels of human. Now, I don't follow the whole, we go from monkeys to humans and, Neanderthals, and I don't believe none of that. I don't believe none of that. I don't fall for none of that. I think that's just some way of them trying to prove a point or to, to say like from history, because, because listen, when the dinosaurs died out, right? Where all these animals came from? Science can't explain that. Because remember, when all these animals live outside most of the time, they can't really be in caves, right? They was dormanted, right? So when the Ice Age era finished and all the animals died out, or at least 95% of the animals died out, the only ones that really survived was the one that live underground, right? Where did the tigers and all these other animals came from? The birds. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm saying maybe some of the reptiles survive, right? The snakes, the ground lizards, whatever. But where did the other animals came from? How did they rebirth back on the planet? How? Unless, like I said, unless some human back in the day, during the Ice Age era, took the animals with them under the underground. But then how did they feed these animals? How did they keep them alive? How did they eat when they need to eat? It takes time for these animals to have children. I mean, to have young ones, and they gotta raise them at a certain age. They have to have enough food to feed them. And the bigger the herd, the more food they need. The more people you have in these caves, the more food they need. How did they survive? On the biblical side, the world started with just two people. Then God he just made the earth, just snap a finger and the earth was here. Well, he speak it into existence. That's what they said. It don't make no sense. We are hypnotized. We was taught to not see the real world. You're bamboozled. You went to when we went to sleep. You know. Okay, let me say. Let me give y'all the reason why I'm using the word hypnotize. The reason why I'm using the word hypnotize is because you have to hypnotize somebody. You have to get their focus, right? And then you got to get into their brain. You got to, I guess, shut off their consciousness and then control the conscious beyond the consciousness. You know what I'm saying? You're controlling the control of their consciousness, right? So they're not conscious because they're not aware of what's happening. You're the one controlling them. And at the time you hypnotize the person, you now have to manipulate the person's mind, or you can now lock off some information or make them think or believe what you want them to think based on the hypnosis control. Now the thing is, once you hypnotize that person and that person go out into the world and live, they only know what been taught or they don't know what was shut off or what was being disaccess from them to have access to, or they was taught to live or memorize certain things based on the hypnotization, right? They're gonna now pass that information on to everybody else around them, and they're gonna have to mold everybody around them into that understanding. And that's to me, That's what the Bible is. The Bible is a hypnosis. It's hypnotized. It's one of the greatest hypnotistic books in the world. That book, it forced people to think or to see things only from that perspective. The Bible is not the only way to live. It's not the way to. It's not the full. It's not a function to life. It's a fantasy book. It's a book that was hypnotized to make you think that the world works the way the Bible described it. Because then I would have to ask, right? I would have to ask this. You know what? Let me see. I'm gonna ask a question. Uh, where is it? Uh, right. So I was looking for the question. I can't find. Anyway, I'll do it later. But yeah. So what I'm saying is, I would have to ask a question. So we have science, right? Science is again is idea of how we think the earth was getting, how humans evolved, to where we are today. Uh, and then you have the Bible just come up with some mystical story about how the earth created and how humans was on top of it, boom. But let's ask another question. What about the aliens? I'm not saying whichever one is true because I don't know. The only how I'm gonna claim something to be true is if I know for sure I can witness it, or the it itself can come and say we did this, and then they can literally show that they did it. That's how I view these things. That's how I'm gonna view that. But while I'm here, I'm only gonna go with what's here. You know what I'm saying? I'm only gonna respond to what's here. You're not gonna say, "Oh, I know there's a God." Like, yeah, I mean, there's some creator out there. I don't know what it is. I've never seen it, never heard of it. I just know I live on this earth. I know what I'm capable of. And the brain that was created for me to use, it opened my mind to understand certain things. It's almost like we have to self learn and self understand. But then what we did was we take that information and we also learn how to be cruel to one another. Now, the funny thing is, none of the things that we do is off limits. Because if I was to say God is a good God, I don't think he would allow us to be down here just torturing people unless he created us to just entertain himself and just watch us destroy ourselves, watch us do the most horrible things to each other, because we're nothing but puppets to him, right? We're like ants in a we're like two like we like black ants and red ants in the same playground, right? You put the black ants on one side and you put the red ants on one side, and then you let them figure out how they're gonna survive. That's how I view the way we're living on this earth. But if I'm gonna speak on reality, right? What about other? We call them aliens. Let's call them aliens. What about aliens? What are other worlds, right? What if our creation came from other worlds? What if a ship or something came to this planet Earth, landed here in the Ice Age, right? It could have been before the Ice Age. It could have been during the Ice Age because we did had a warm era before the second Ice Age, and developed themselves, brought some of the animals and stuff wherever they had it from, and brought it here. I'm just basing that on a science perspective. If I take science out of it, what if hypothetically damn, I don't even want to go with the computer stuff. I don't even want to go that far, right? But why? What if we just created? What if something brought us here instead of us just develop or evolve? You know what I'm saying? What if something just brought us here? Why we have to go with the Bible story? Why we have to even just go with the science story? Now, I'm not saying I'm more on science side than the Bible, but I'm just saying science only gonna base things than the information that they have, and they only can lie for so long. Science can't lie forever because somebody gonna always replicate it and bring proof to it, right? Or challenge it. Somebody gonna always challenge it. So science can't lie forever. But what I'm saying is this: why are we ruling out aliens, or maybe we are the aliens? Maybe we was the one who came here prior to the planet, you know, being fully livable or whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying? The hypnosis can also go into present day. I'm talking about the hypnosis is that we are completely off from our normal social living, from normal social survival. Survival means you have to live accordingly to survive, which means humans, like just like ants have to, and two, three ants by themselves is not going to survive. Anything can kill them, right? But it's the same thing with humans. Even though we have other animals here that can attack us and stuff like that, we also have disasters and stuff that can get rid of us too by numbers. But as a whole, as a group, we can build things and create things to also sustain our lives by numbers. And that's how the survival works. That's how survival works. I'm not saying you're still not gonna have bad situations. I'm not saying men still ain't gonna be men and women ain't gonna be women. I'm saying we have to work, we have to have an understanding of working together where the peace is amongst each other. And yes, you're gonna have some people, want to do whatever. We deal with them accordingly. You know what I'm saying? The structure, the destruction that we have today was not the destruction we had when people were just trying to survive, when people were just trying to live. Once we start involving in the hypnosis mentality to make people think the way you want them to think, I'm going to give you an example of what I mean when I say hypnosis. Today, in order for you to make money, you have to create a problem, and then for that same problem, you create a cure or solution for that problem. That's the hypnosis. I got to make you think. I got to hypnotize you to think that something is wrong with you, or something you're doing, or something gonna happen, or create a problem for you to come to me. And then I will charge you for that issue that I created for you to come, for me to make a living off of you. But to the truth to be told, the thing that I created, you don't even need it. But you only need it because there's a hypnosis before that. Remember, there's levels to it. The TV, what is it? The TV should be televised. I think that's the quote. Way back in the 80s, when people laughing, people watching the news, like they was using certain gestures and operation for people to functionalize. These are studies that science did themselves. How to manipulate the human brain to make them think and operate a certain way. You don't need to do it, actually, because we had tribes before these hypnosis behaviors, right? We had tribes before them, right? And they understand that the chief, they have to have a leader at some point, and the chief will be able to be the one to dictate everybody or how the village move and so forth, so forth, so forth. That's a normal thing, right? You didn't have to hypnotize them, but the people in the village also understand that they're just not hypnotized by they have to do things a certain way just to live. They were just surviving. That's it. But today, we are to have people in a control mechanism, society wise. We are told to live a certain way. We are told to act a certain way. We are told to move a certain way. We have restrictions to what we can do, what we can't do. And then those things, and I'm not saying you can have restrictions in no era. I'm just saying the things are being forceful to make us act out or not challenge the crazy stuff that we're doing. And then it's making the world more horrible. It's making it worse. I'm speaking because I've learned these things. I have to study. If you observe, if anybody observe the world, observe your family, observe your kids, observe the people around you, have a conversation about just about basic common sense of understanding. You're gonna realize what I'm saying is like, damn, that's crazy. Humans is just all anything on this planet is just trees, no matter what it is. It's all about survival. A prey, when there's a prey is something that you survive yourself from. You know, you get sick, you go out, you try to find medicine. You know, you take chances to do things because that's what humans do. We develop, we create, we do stuff like that. Yes, we might have a few straggler humans that are gonna do bad things, you know, stuff like that, right? Which is fine. But the part that's not normal is that a lot of these wars and stuff that we are having, those things are not human like. And if anybody used the Bible to say, oh, the Bible, this is why you need the Bible so we don't have to go to war. But really and truly, the Bible teaches you how to go to war. The Bible tells you to go to war. They tell you, it tells you. God tell people to go to war in the Bible. Started from Genesis. The first war disaster thing God did was destroy the whole planet with water. He started this envy behavior between Cain and Abel. He started it. As a God, why you have to start something between two sons? Why? And then the one who did the worst, his punishment was to go out and multiply the fucking planet. How? Oh, I cursed. My bad. I didn't mean to do that. That was my fault. How you gonna multiply a sinner? And yeah, you give him the mark. You give him the mark of a sinner. I think it was like a 7 or something like that. You gave him the mark to show that he's a sinner, but he's the one to populate the planet. How are you going to support the person who does the most grievous thing by taking another? He took his brother's life, and then you tell him to go out and just live and have and he had about maybe 4 or 5 more women, and he had multiple kids, and he populated the earth. And then we believe the hypnotism is that we believe that makes sense. That don't make no sense. We're hypnotized, we're bamboozled, we're brainwashed. You can't make sense out of something that is destroyable and then still say it's wrong. Then what God should have said was it's okay to be jealous of somebody and take their life just because. That's what he should have said. Because that's what's happening. And ever since then, since we're following that criteria, that's how the world is living. Because I can promise you, when you study the history versus the biblical story, you don't really hear or see these type of destruction of this mass killing on like war beefing and all that stuff prior to the Bible being involved. And I'm saying what the Bible story, like Genesis, when God told it, when God created a lot of wars in the Bible. This is before Christ. This is in Genesis story, even in the Moses era, right? Because the like I said, the first starting of this murderous behavior is with Cain and Abel. After Cain and Abel, you had um what his name is Noah's two sons, right? When one son, because the one son laughed at his dad because he was drunk. Instead of say your dad shouldn't be drinking, look how he look. It's disgraceful to the children. I'm not saying the son was right because it's wrong for the son to make fun of the father, but at the same time he's young, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying it's an I would say it's a slap in the wrist if you want to say that, because kids gonna do stupid things. He could have punished the son a different way. He could have punished Ham a different way, but because he laughed at his dad, right, and the other two brothers had to cover him up and so forth, so forth. Little dude is young. Like the other two brothers was the two oldest brothers. One of them already have a kid, so I'm assuming Ham was probably like Ham had a son. Yeah, that was Ham for a son. Ham's son was probably like in his teens or some shit, something like that. So he don't know how to act. He don't know how to behave. You know what I'm saying? I look on uh, okay, so yeah, you know what I mean. Ham didn't his son. You know what I'm saying? His son was a young kid, so he was doing childish things. Yeah, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been punished, at some way, somehow. But what Noah said was, because Noah said the son of Ham, I forget his name, Canaan. The son of Ham, Canaan, will be servant to all his brethren, which is Seth and Shem. I mean, Japheth and Sam, right? Japheth and Seth, sorry, Japheth and Seth. Ham cursed Canaan young son, first son, saying that all of Canaan kids, everybody for Canaan is gonna be slaves to Seth and Japheth. Now he didn't say he's gonna be slaves to other sons that can have, right? But that's what he said. And guess what? God granted that wish. God granted that wish. And then the people who pass on that information, because if you look at Canaan today, because Canaan is Israel today, you see what I'm saying? They're beefing over that perspective. And the people who's supposed to be Canaan, which is a generation of Ham, which is also part of Noah's people, because Noah's supposed to be black too, or African, if you want to call them, or dark skinned. How you can be mad at the people who give life to you? I don't understand that. And this is the hypnosis I'm talking about. You're taught to believe and to be confused about who you are, what your lineage are, what you look like, and all this stuff. And then you're gonna go against the same people who give you life, the same people who is your lineage. That don't make no sense. This is why I lean towards science. Even though I'm saying science is not 100%, Because the science also keeps secrets too. Science also try to hypnotize us too by giving us false information or make up stuff to make us think that we're going right and we're going just because they want to control us and dictate us. Right? Money is a hypnotism too. You don't need money to live on this planet. We could stick to, trade and doing rotation. Like even with money here right now, money's supposed to be known as a tool, not the core to life. It's a tool. You use it to survive because you don't have to just live off of, like millions of people now don't have to just live off the ground anymore. We don't have to just go and be digging up some fruits in our backyard. We use money to kind of cope with a lot of things that we need. But these are the hypnosis thing I'm talking about. This is how hypnotized we are. Because like I said, you have the Bible, you have science, and then you have the aliens, if you want to call them that. Let's use the word aliens, right? 'Cause aliens could be another group of human beings. Aliens could look just like us. We do not know how humans or how this planet even came about. We do not know nothing about it. Everything we're doing is speculative. The only thing we can go by is the information that was left here for us to go by. The Bible was written for control. It's a manipulation. It's a hypnotism book. It hypnotizes you. It makes you think and believe something or act a certain way because of fear. It brainwashes your mind to think outside of so you can be more independent, so you can do things for yourself. If we all had the same, like for example, if okay, let me see if I could break this down. Let me see if I could break it down. As any individual, and you have a friend, two friends, whatever, you're gonna always feel like you have some respect for your friend have respect for you. But for those respect to be gained, y'all have to gain it towards each other, right? In the world that y'all live in, you're gonna do things for this person, and as expected or not expected, the person can do things for you. But there's no animosity there because you both are trying to survive at the same time. You both are trying to look out for each other at the same time. You see what I'm saying? So you're not doing nothing crazy. That's the nature of things. If I'm gonna if we're starving and I have I learned to do cook or do something and I say, yo, bro, yo, I got some rice. You know what I'm saying? We could boil this rice and we could split that up and we could eat. That's natural instincts. That's natural behavior. That's a natural survival way of living. But no, that's not how we live today. That's not how we live today. You know how we live today? You're gonna be like, yeah, bro, I got some rice, but guess what? You gotta pay me for it. We're both starving though. I'll be like, what you mean? He'll be like, you know what? Fine. I'm gonna pay you for it. So I'm gonna pay you for the rice. Now you make more money. Now you can buy more rice. I just have rice. I ain't got no food now. When my food run out, what I gotta do? Right? If I come back to you and I say, well, guess what? The rice is done. I want some more food. How can I get some more food? He'll be like, well, shit. I already used the money to buy more rice. You know what I'm saying? So now, dude, save some of the rice from what you had before. Now he's doubling up and he's selling the rice to you. Now you ain't got no money to buy the rice. He gonna be like, well, you gotta get more money. So now you, let me use letters, A and B. B now gotta go find more money to come back to buy more rice. But guess what? He either gonna do something bad, like rob, do something bad, right? So he could get the rights. And when he do something bad, there's two things can happen. He either get killed or go to jail, right? So let's just say he survived. He come back. He said, "Boom, I got some money. Let me get some more rice." Now, dude is racking up because dude is spending money with him the whole time. But guess what? At some point, somebody gonna get jealous in the situation because it's either the seller is gonna say, "Damn, where you getting this money from?" Boom, 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 boom. Or the buyer could say, "Well, listen, man, I'm tired of doing criminal things just to come buy some rice with you, and you're supposed to be my homie." If anything, we could support each other, right? But that's not how it works. That's not how it works, man. We tend to crop on top of each other. And I'm not saying we can't do, and I'm basically breaking that to show you how money get into people's head, how we get hypnotized, how we get brainwashed, right? And due to the Bible conception, the world had twisted. And I'm not saying we can't have a governing system, because we can, but we have to be honest about it. Yes, you don't tell people everything right away, especially with younger people. But by the time you turn 18, 19, you should know at least 90% of the things that's going on in the world. Some of the things you have to learn on your own, but at least 90% of it that's already created. It should already been taught to school. The basic things about school, the basic things about survival, the basic things about understanding how the world works. We should teach those things, but we don't do that. We lie to them. We give them a bunch of false narratives about a lot of fake stuff. And then we add more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And it getting more complicated and more weird and more out of control. And then people come up with this delusional mind thinking that they could do whatever they want. They could act how they want. They could believe what they want. They could speak on things that they never experienced. I mean, you could have an opinion about things you never experienced, but is it true? Does it operate the way you think it is? Does it feel the same? Can you really tolerate it? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Some things you have to experience it to really understand it. That's how the world works. That's the nature of the real world. But anyway, yeah, man. I'm like, I don't have to do a part to this. But the hypnosis, man, we need to fix this. I mean, you know what? Let me take it back. We can't fix this. It's too damaged. We're never gonna fix this. In order to fix this, we got to do a purge, and we have to start all over again. You know, it's just not gonna work. It's not gonna work. I appreciate if you guys also give me a like too. Let me know if you guys understand or like what I'm saying, or if it don't make sense. Just let me know. Uh, maybe we can dialogue about it. You know, I'm saying, and the reason why I'm saying a lot of these things is because this also formulate with the way how we're living today. With going through the beefing between the U.S. and Israel and Iran and places like that. Like I'm not saying we can't. Like we shouldn't be doing none of those stuff. But we all human beings. It's crazy that the stuff that we do or we highlight is the stuff that destroys us, make us look like clowns, like idiots. That don't make sense. You know what I mean? I was a product of the bamboozle. I was a product of the hypnotism. I probably still think I'm somewhere hypnotizing someone. There's some things I still struggle with. But I know outside of that, it's not supposed to be that way. I know it. But anyway, I appreciate any you guys coming in and anybody who actually, you know, uh could relate to what I'm saying or, you know, hear what I'm saying. But just give me a like, man. Let me know if you guys like the video. If you don't like the video, uh, you know, leave a comment. You could communicate. We could go back and forth. I'm cool with it. Challenging the things I'm saying, and then for the next one, it's gonna be good. I'm gonna continue this conversation, and hopefully, we get more interaction with with everybody in YouTube. But we got issues right now, man. We got Iran going crazy. The US going crazy. We're gonna have to see how that goes, man. But anyway, I appreciate anybody who coming in and give me their 5 minutes of time or 3 minutes of time. I appreciate you guys coming in and spending a few minutes with me. Until the next video, peace.